Okay, so in this short demonstration video, I'm going to be showing you how to use some of the tools that are built into the BBJ Enterprise Manager to help you create a new table definition for an existing data file. So this would be for a data file that you already are using in your BBJ application, maybe using read calls or read record calls, and you may be using an IO list or a string template or some other means of reading and parsing that information in. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can do this and to make that process much quicker for you. So let's start off by creating a new table. As you can see there, we click the Add button. We're going to call this table Item, and we have a data file named Item. Now you have the option of creating an entirely new table and data file. In our case, we have an existing data file, so we would want to select this option here, but just know that you can create a brand new one from scratch if you want, including selecting the file type and that kind of thing. Now, when you create a table definition for an existing file, you have a couple of options. You have one is that you can create one using a string template. That's the first one I'll show you here. That's going to be the quickest way to do it. If you have a string template available, you'll see just how quick and easy that is. So we'll start off with that. We hit Next. All we have to do here is paste in our string template, hit Next, and as you can see, it creates nice column definitions for us that the SQL engine can use for executing queries. Now, when we hit Next, it takes us to the indexes page, and you can see here it's pulled index definitions into the data dictionary based on the keys that are already defined on the data file. So it maps them to the appropriate columns automatically for us. Hit Finish, and we're done. So it's that easy if you have a string template. Now notice here, we'll go over and verify that everything looks good. So we'll do a select star from our new item table. We'll look at the data, and we can make sure that our data looks good, and it does. It all looks pretty normal there. I will point out that when you do this test here, when you do a select from your table, if some of this data is misaligned, like maybe this Ancho here is starting to show up in the item num column, maybe partway down or in the middle, or values are getting chopped off, or maybe some numbers here from this cost start showing up over here in this column. What that tells you is that your table definition is incorrect in some way. And so you'd want to go back to that table definition and edit it. And you'd come over to your columns and say, let's say that you looked at it and you say, oh, it looks like maybe I didn't define a particular column of the right length. So you would just simply go back and select that column and then scroll down here and find dictionary length, and we could change that. Maybe you meant for it to be 8, but you put in 6, so you could change it there. And I'll go ahead and do that just so you can see what it would do. And we save that up here. And I did want to point out something here that is important when you're creating table definitions or making changes to table definitions. When you get this message here, when you're making a change to a table definition, what it's asking you is if you would like to update the table's data file so that it matches any changes to the data dictionary that you've made, or record sizes, as well as index definitions. The reason we ask you that, you may be thinking, well, why don't you just do it for me? Of course I want it changed. You may not, because keep in mind that the SQL data dictionary here may not match what your application is expecting as far as the raw data that's coming into the application. So if your application is using read calls with an IO list, or read record operations with a string template, or some other means of parsing that data, if you make changes through the Enterprise Manager user interface to a table definition and have it rewrite that table's data file, that may not match what your application is expecting when it does a read record call or a read call. So you want to make sure that any changes you make are going to be compatible with your application, or that you're planning to change your application's logic in order to correctly read that data file, including key equal calls on your read records that will look up values and records based on keys. All of those things need to match. So just keep that in mind. That's why we ask you this question, because what it's going to do, if you say yes, is it's going to create a new data file with the new record size, the new record layout, the field layouts, the index definitions, and then copy all of the information from the old one into the new one and replace the old file with the new file. So now it will match what the SQL engine is expecting. But as I said, your application may not be set up to be able to understand those changes. So just keep that in mind here. So in many cases, you'll want to answer no. And in this case, I'm going to answer no. Now, also note that it says, hey, we think that you may want to expand your record size. Again, you don't have to. You may say, no, my record size is what I expected it to be, so I want to leave that alone, and I'm going to just say no here. But if you say yes, then it will change it as you saw there as it recommended. Now, the next thing that we'll do is I'm going to close this out, delete our table definition here. Notice I'm not checking this box. If I put a check in this box here, it would delete the data file as well. In our case, we want to keep the data file, so we're just going to click OK, but I thought I would explain that dialog also. All right, now let's create one using a manual method as well as an IO list. So again, we're coming back here, and we're going to use the item table, and we're going to use the item file, create an existing definition. Now you notice this editor looks a little bit different here. And that's because it is showing us the raw record data for our records. We can scroll through that and see the various records that are currently available in our file this way, just to see if there's any differences in the way some of the records are lined up, that kind of thing. But this allows us to define it when we don't have a string template available, and to do so in a way that's still pretty quick and easy. So let's start off by looking if we have an IO list. So if you build from an IO list, then you would just simply paste in that IO list definition. So you can see here, these are our field values and variables that would be as part of our application. I'm going to click OK. And as you can see here, it quickly came up with the definitions for us, including column names, types, lengths, terminator characters, and so forth. We can click Next. You can see here, just like with the string template version, it created those column definitions for us. And again, it pulled in those index definitions for us as well, making it really easy right there. So that's how you would do it with an IO list. And you may still have to make some modifications, and I'll show you kind of how you can do that here with our final way. So now we click Add again. Let's type in our info, and let's create a table definition again for an existing file. Now I'm going to show you kind of the manual way, but it's still very quick and easy because you're doing it visually. Now, since we don't have an IO list, a string template, we're going to have to look at this. And it's pretty clear here when we're looking at this character data that where each of the fields starts. So what we do then is we're going to mark the beginning of each field in our definition. So we're going to start off right here at the beginning. We click on that, and we can either click on the type that we want to use, or we can type the character. So I'll just type C, and notice it added a column, and it just gave it a default column name. Since the column names aren't part of the record information at the file level, we have to assign that. So here you can see it created one column definition from here. We don't have another one, so it just assumes that the remainder of the record is part of that column definition, and that's why you see this long 84 characters in length here. But you can see it got our type correct, and then now we're going to click on the beginning of the next field or column, and you can see here it's pretty clear it's where the ancho starts, so we'll click there, and again a C. Now notice we see the character starting here, and down here now we have two column definitions. And this one, it updated the length for us automatically, added the terminator character, and the same thing here. Of course, it goes to the end of the record until we start defining column definitions after that. So here we do CH. I just typed a quick C there. As you can see, it starts to be very quick as I'm just clicking at the beginning of where I can tell each one of these columns and fields starts, and I'm just scrolling through and I'm done. So as I said, that is almost as quick and easy as using a string template. Of course, here you see your column names are going to be kind of default automatically generated column names. You can change those here if you'd like. or you can change them on the next panel. But we can do this here if we want to do that quickly. Any that we don't change, as you see here, we could go in and change those here if we want to as well. And then you can see that just like when we're using a string template, it pulls in our index definitions for us automatically. We hit finish, and our table definition is created. We can come over to the SQL page, and our column names aren't what we would expect here because we only updated a couple of them, but you get the idea there. And you can check the alignment and make sure all of your values are good. But as you can see there, everything lines up as we expected. So there now you have several different ways that you can create your table definitions for an existing data file in a way that is pretty quick and easy.